Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. I'm returning to you tonight for this premiere video for the best albums of 2024 part 1 video, because I know I'm not going to get all these albums done in one video, but I'll see what I can do for most of this video. I'm going to try to probably get it to 20-30 minutes for this video, but I'll keep you updated on where I am at. But other than that, I'm going to discuss from 71 to whatever number I get to for the first part of Best Albums of 2024 video, the albums I've listened to. I'm including EPs, compilations, and regular studio albums. So I know it shouldn't count, but these are releases that I've listened to during the year of 2024. So now, let's start with number 71 with Kate Hudson, Glorious. Now, I was surprised that Kate Hudson put out a pretty good record. Not something I really came back to as the year went on, but it was enjoyable, for sure. I did enjoy her vocals during this record, and just songs that I've enjoyed from this record were pretty amazing and glorious in a way of what the album's name is, of course, but I can't remember all the tracks that I listened to, but I remember enjoying this record this year, so it made it at my number 71 on this list. Number 70 is Ella Mai with 3 EP. Now, this was an enjoyable record for 3 songs on this EP, so you're not getting much, but Ella Mai actually impressed me with her singing / rapping from time to time. I mean, there's some lyricism that gets a little sexualized in this record, but overall, the execution works for this record, and it turned out to be a strong release from her for only 3 songs, so you're in for an interesting release. That was my number 70 pick. Number 69 is Bruce Dickinson with the Mandrake Project. Now, I did enjoy this record. It's not something I really came back to as the year went on, but it was something I enjoyed as 2024 progressed throughout the year. But overall, yeah, I think it was the Afterglow of Ragnarok or whatever that song was called, but that was a pretty strong track, and he's the lead singer of Iron Maiden, but overall, his vocals are pretty strong in this record, but there are some moments where I had a few critiques with the record, but it did make it in my best albums of 2024. Strong record, definitely recommend you guys check this record out if you have not listened to it this year. Number 68 is New Year's Day with Half Black Heart. Now, I like Ashley's vocals in the title track, Half Black Heart. That was a strong track. I Still Believe was a pretty good one too, but had some cringy moments with how she was singing it. But Vampire was a song that I wasn't sure if I liked, to be honest. And I think that was the first single to the record. And not one of the best singles, in my honest opinion. Sorry, my back is kind of itching in a way, so sorry about that you had to see that. But other than that, New Year's Day, Half Black Heart, pretty strong record, and worthy to be in the best albums of 2024. Number 67 is Accept with Humanoid. Now, this was a pretty good record from what I listened to throughout the year. I came back to it a few times, but I didn't really come back to it since then. But I remember enjoying this record. The lead singer's vocals sound really good. The progression, the drum work in this record is quite outstanding. And just execution-wise, this record pulled it off for what they were going for this next album in their discography. So Accept has my approval to be on the best albums of 2024. Number 66 is Dragon Force with Warp Speed Warriors. This was an album I was really hyped up to listen to in 2024, and I'm glad I listened to it because I really enjoyed this record. This was a Really good album. Power of the Triforce is my favorite. Doomsday Party, one of the weakest, but not one of the worst songs on the record. Everything else sounded really good. Even Taylor Swift Wildest Dreams cover is a lot better than the Taylor Swift version. I'll tell you that much. Sounds really good with how uh, the lead singer's singing it. I know the lead singer's name, but I'd have to go back and look into that. For the band members' names, Herman Lee is a great guitarist, so is Sam Totman. But execution-wise, this record did pull it off with what they were going for. And just most of the singles were bangers. So definitely enjoyed this record. Was worthy to be in the best albums of 2024 list. Number 65 is Dua Lipa with Radical Optimism. Now, I know a lot of people said this was not Dua Lipa's best record, but in my opinion, it was pretty good. Yes, Illusion was not one of my favorites. It did get a little repetitious with the electronic work, but it did have a catchy beat. I did not hate that song too much. I mean, yes, it was quite irritating of a listen with the electronic work and her sound effect vocals going illusion or whatever. That gets a little annoying after a little bit, but the song is pretty catchy. Don't get me wrong. But Houdini is my favorite. You have other tracks like Training Season. That was another one of my favorites. But there were some other tracks. The closing track was my personal favorite. But overall, Dua Lipa has pulled out some pretty strong records as of lately. And I think this is one of her best as of lately. So, in my opinion, of course. I mean, you guys have your own opinion what you think of the albums you listened to in 2024, but this, I personally think, was worthy to be in the list, at the top tier list of best albums, because we got a lot more ground to cover with the rest of it. So, number 64 is Black Veil Brides with Bleeders EP. Now, this was a strong release from Black Veil Brides. I would say the My Friends cover, that track is not my favorite, where he says, "At last, my right arm is complete again." That part got a little cringy, and the outro to it was pretty dark and a little gruesome with how it was being presented. That ending part of the song, "At last, my right arm is complete again." Sunday Bloody Sunday is actually not a bad YouTube cover that they covered. It does get a little repetitious, but overall, I think this was a record, an EP that I came back to, but I did enjoy for the most part. So this was a strong release and had to be in my best albums of 2024 list. Number 63 is Attack Attack with Disaster EP. Now, this was a strong release from what I listened to during the year of 2024. It came out in the late third quarter of 2024, but it was a pretty good release from what I listened to, and I had a good time listening to this record. I mean, there was one song I had an opinion about, my critiques about, but it wasn't terrible, but it could have done a lot better. They always make that one song that you may or may not like. So, it's just hit or miss. But other than that, Attack Attack did pull out some good songs. Disaster was my favorite. We All Meet Up in the End was pretty good. Blood on the Walls was alright. And Concrete was my favorite. But yeah, Blood on the Walls was kinda But still, Attack Attack Disaster EP has my approval to be on the best albums of 2024 list. Number 62 is Kitty with Fire. Now, this was a strong release. Did not think this metal band, or almost metalcore band, did very well with their new record. They're a girl band, but these girls can fucking rock for sure. They got the stuff, meaning they can definitely jam out pretty well. So I think there were some tracks that were really strong. Some of the singles were pretty strong, and execution-wise, this whole record for a very short runtime impressed me. And I was really impressed with how the overall record turned out. So it was definitely something I had to put on this list. Number 61 is Chrissy Costanza with 7 EP. Now this was only 7 tracks, but still, for the 20 plus minute runtime of this record, I think this was not that bad. It was pretty good. What If I Fly? But What If I Fly was my favorite track to open the record. 7 Minutes in Hell, pretty good song, but it took a little bit of time to grow on me. If Looks Could Kill was my favorite. Pick Your Poison was my favorite. Then you have songs like You'd Be Right was my least favorite. It wasn't terrible, but not one of my favorite tracks. But still not terrible. It's just the whisper vocals in that song are a little iffy. Some Like It Hot was pretty good. And then you have the last track, I Tried to Act Your Age. I think Perfect Crime is a bonus track to this EP, but I'm not sure. But still, I enjoyed this EP when I listened to it during 2024 in the final quarter of it, and it definitely impressed me. Number 60 is Atreyu with the Pronoia Sessions reimagined and revised. This is a compilation record, but from what I gathered, I enjoyed this release. Good songs that I've listened to. Like a Stone was my favorite reimagined and revised cover. Warrior acoustic version sounded really nice. Last Dance with Mary Jane, or Mary Jane's Last Dance, that Tom Petty cover, I was really impressed with that one, in my opinion. I know it's a very hit or miss track because of what the song is pertaining to be about necrophilia and dancing with a dead corpse. It was fucking weird with the Tom Petty video. That was some weird shit. But may he rest in peace, of course. He was a talented musician. He didn't have a lot of great hits, but he still had some strong hits for the most part, like Free Fall and I Won't Back Down, and Running Down a Dream, and many others. I think the Apartment song was another one I enjoyed. But overall, from what I listened to with Atreyu's The Pronoia Sessions, good release from them. And I was really impressed with how this turned out. So, great release from them. Number 59 is Vola with Friend of a Phantom. And I really enjoyed this record. Cannibal featuring Anders Frieden, and that track was amazing. Break My Lying Tongue was a pretty strong track. I mean, the production in this record is amazing from what I listened to. And overall, I think from what I listened to, Glass Mannequin was my favorite. Bleed Out was strong. But overall, execution-wise, this record pulled it off for what it was going for. The lead singer had this really prog metal vocals, and it was mostly prog metal, electronic metal kind of stuff, but they at least fused it in the best way possible because the mixing and production was very strong on this record. So that's what I appreciated about Vola with their new record this year, and it had to make it in the top 50 section of this list. Wasn't one of the strong records of the year, but it was one of the best records of 2024. Number 58 is The Browning with Omni. Now, another strong release that I listened to during 2024. The Browning, they did have a few hit or miss songs. I wasn't sure if I was going to get used to their electronic metalcore sound, electronic core, metalcore kind of style, but it did grow on me after a little bit of time because I did come back to this quite a bit during the fourth quarter of 2024, which is the final quarter we're finishing up on as of now. But other than that, the Browning Omni is something to definitely listen to for the 8 songs, and it is not a terrible listen. Number 57 is Linkin Park with From Zero. Now, this was one of the most surprising, shocking releases because The Emptiness Machine came out on September 5th when it was released as a single, and then they announced this album. But other than that, I think Linkin Park had it set out for some of the singles, like Heavy as a Crown. It took a little bit of time for these songs to grow on me, but Over Each Other was my favorite from what I listened to. I know not a lot of people are going to be used to Linkin Park's newest direction they're going in, but they're trying to do something different. That different is what I'm appreciating about this record, because at least it has some of their old stuff, but they're trying to blend in some new elements with this new record and fuse it to make a interesting atmosphere of an album. So that's what I appreciated about Linkin Park's new record. I mean, there were some critiques with some of the tracks, but nothing to the extent where I hated this record. I mean, Overflow was not one of my favorite songs because the mixing was a little iffy. But then you have Casualty, which was one of my favorites. But Mike Shinoda, yeah, his shouting was a little underwhelming at times, but it still was a strong track. But that's what I mostly appreciated about Linkin Park, that they're not afraid to try something new, even if they are set up to fail or succeed. They at least made a better record than One More Light. We gotta appreciate that. I mean, One More Light, yes, it was the last record with Chester Bennington. May he rest in peace, of course. He will be missed to this day. But it's the fact of this record that they tried to go in their more rock sound like they're used to. And it succeeded for the most part, in my opinion. But that's just what I think. Anyone else that thinks that Linkin Park's new record, From Zero, is not good, you have a right to your own opinion. This is just my list and what I put on the list. And I enjoyed this record this year. Number 56 is Crossfaith with Arc. A pretty strong release from what I listened to in 2024. There were a few tracks I had opinions about, like Lamb, and some other tracks. I can't remember. Zero was one that I did enjoy, but I didn't enjoy the intro to the track where he's doing the singing, screeching yells or whatever. I don't know if I like that. But other than that, the lead singer did have some good screaming vocals, and this mixing for this record was awesome. And the drum work and the metalcore soundscape and electronic core stuff did impress me. So that's what I enjoyed about Crossfaith's new record. It was not afraid to push its boundaries into a different soundscape and make it execute very well with even the instrumentation in the background. Number 55 is Green Day with Saviors. Now, this was a surprising release that I enjoyed. Well, it was something that was coming out. I was very surprised that it actually did pretty well, this record. Bobby Sucks was not one of my favorite songs, but Dilemma was pretty good. Well, it had its moments, that track, but some of the track did have its weak tendencies. But other than that, there were some other tracks like uh, the one that sounds like I guess you could say holiday in a way, or something like that. I can't think of what the track's name is, but I know what it is. It's just I kind of forgot what the track's name was. But Living in the 20s was my favorite one. Then you have The American Dream is Killing Me, one of the best tracks, and very political and controversial track, but definitely was enjoyable from what I listened to. So Green Day definitely impressed me with this record. And I had to put it on this list because everyone else puts it on their list too. So it's like, yeah, Green Day did impress me this year. And I did listen to this album all the way to the 15 tracks. So, enjoyable record. Number 54 is Linkin Park with Paper Cuts again. Another Linkin Park release that I heard earlier this year and that I did enjoy. Um, Took a little time to get used to how the songs were playing out. And they were their older songs, of course, that they were putting as a singles collection for this Paper Cuts compilation record. But Friendly Fire was only the newest song for this record. And it was a pretty strong One More Light song that I listened to as a unreleased track that I enjoyed this year. So I did enjoy this Paper Cuts edition of Linkin Park for the compilation record that they put out. But some of the record was kind of not meshing well with how each song was closing out and then it's going into another song that I'm not sure if I'm connecting with. But other than that, uh, it it's just the track listing was kind of not thought out very well to where it's going to sound very good. But it is what it is. This is what they wanted to do. And it's a good memorial record to honor Chester's memory for the songs he did give us for the past 17 years of each Linkin Park's cycle for the 7 albums of his time being with Linkin Park until his passing, which still may he rest in peace. He's still missed to this day. And I think Emily Armstrong might be doing well for the band in her own way. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with some of the things she does behind the scenes, like Scientology and all that, but as long as she can sing and do it right to honor Chester's memory on what Linkin Park should sound like, that's fine. I'll be on board with it as long as the albums don't suck. Other than that, yeah. Number 54 is Linkin Park with Paper Cuts. Number 53 is Alkaline Trio with Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs. Really good record. I wasn't sure if I was going to get used to this record, but it did grow on me. It was something I was really excited to listen to in 2024 when it came out earlier this year, and was a pretty enjoyable record for a 2024 release. So I did enjoy this record from Alkaline Trio. Like, Breakdown was my favorite song. Time Machine was my favorite one too. Or Broken Down in a Time Machine, I think it was the song's name. I can't remember the song's name, but it was a good one. The title track was great. The opening track was my favorite. But there were some other songs that did pretty well for the most part. There was both Matt Skiba and the other vocalists harmonizing through this record. They had certain songs they were singing, but other than that, the record did pull it off in a pretty good way and made it to be on the best albums of 2024 for this list. Number 52 is Beartooth with The Surface Deluxe Edition. Now, you only have one new track, Attention, which the 11 songs that I listened to during this record, like The Surface, Riptide, then you have Doubt Me, which was one of my personal favorites. It has a great breakdown. at the end of the chorus where he says, "Don't ever fucking doubt me," and then it goes. It has a good breakdown from what I listened to that I enjoyed, and overall, Caleb Shomo's screaming vocals during this record and how this record is sounding overall, it did very well, and it wasn't afraid to try to push it different soundscapes for what they were going for, and blending genres in the electronic scene, the metalcore scene. It did very well to blend that together to fuse a great record, a pretty good record. But it wasn't one of the best records, but the Better Me featuring Hardy, pretty strong track too. Might Love Myself was good. Then you have Sunshine, which was my favorite. What's Killing You was pretty good. Then you have New Reality, was my favorite one. And I Was Alive was the best track. Definitely something he dedicated to his late grandfather that passed. And it was a pretty enjoyable track as the closing track until you get to Attention and some of the other tracks. I did enjoy a remix version of Might Love Myself. It sounded really good mixing wise with the electronic work, and it did very well. So other songs did good acoustic wise, but I did have a few opinions and critiques with this record for the deluxe edition itself, but still impressed me this year when I listened to this back in when the new Seether album came out, of course, on September 20th. But it was a good release, and definitely something that I know a lot of bands are throwing out deluxe editions a year later after their albums come out. I don't know why they don't do it maybe 2 weeks later after the record comes out, but bands can do what they want to do as long as they can market it very well and make a profit off the singles and impress the fans too and make them pleased with the music they get. Still, Beartooth pulled it off and made it on my best albums of 2024. Number 51 is Normandy with Dopamine. Now, this was a pretty good record. Hourglass was my favorite one. Then you have some other singles like Serotonin, which was pretty strong. Flowers on a it was called Flowers to the Grave or whatever that song was. But my favorite one was Ritual, and Butterflies was pretty strong. But other than that, I think the lead singer from Normandy has great vocals, and overall, this record impressed me this year for the 11 tracks and a good runtime that I listened to during this release. So, definitely enjoyed Normandy's new record, Dopamine. Number 50 is Nothing Nowhere with Dark Magic. Now, this was a rap record with some electronics fused with it, and he did some acoustic songs that I did enjoy with some of his emo rap stuff. Nothing Nowhere impressed me with this record. I mean, there were a few other releases he put out that I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy. I know he dropped another release recently on December 20th, but I didn't get around to listening to it because I wasn't sure if I wanted to, but it's something I'm going to definitely check out soon. It just depends. I might have a 2025 release date for that review, probably the first week of it. But other than that, Nothing Nowhere did have some good songs like Doomsday, and a few other tracks I enjoyed. Some of his rapping songs, there were some mumble stuff from time to time that I wasn't sure if I was on board with, but I did have some critiques with some of the mumble rap songs, but other than that, for the emo rap style he went for, he pulled it off, and this record became one of my favorites. I think the outro to the album, the last remaining songs, had some punk rock, emo rock style to it that I enjoyed. Number 49 is Sum 41 with Heaven and Hell. Definitely a good send-off for Sum 41 in my opinion. They pulled it off with this record. For the 20 tracks, you have the Heaven side, which is only 10 songs for the opening section of the record, and then you have the last 10, which is the Hell side, and the last track, This Is How the End Begins, was my favorite song to close out this record. You had other tracks that I enjoyed. Waiting on a Twist of Fate was my favorite one. Dopamine was pretty good, but Time Won't Wait was my favorite one that I enjoyed. It was the 4th track on the record that I enjoyed for the Heaven section of this record, and definitely was a record I was blatantly surprised with, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like the Heaven section of the record, but it did grow on me after a while. Bad Mistake was my favorite one. But you also have, I think Landmines was my least favorite, but not one of the... It was a song that grew on me, but it took a little bit of time to grow on me. But other than that, this record impressed me and had to be on my best albums of 2024 list. Number 48 is Justin Timberlake with Everything I Thought It Was. Pretty strong release from Justin Timberlake. Long record, by the way. Like 76, 77 minutes. But enjoyable listen for sure. Drown was my favorite single. Selfish was pretty good. The one, Paradise featuring NSYNC, was one of my favorite songs on the record. It was the second to last track before you get to the closing one. Conditions was the closing track for the record, but Favorite Drug was not one of my favorite songs, but it wasn't terrible. And then you have Sanctified, which was a pretty strong track with a featured artist in it, and I enjoyed his rapping verse in that track. But other than that, this record did very well for what it was going for. The opening track is a good atmospheric vibe, a definite vibe to chill out to and just vibe to, and really enjoy the soundscape of the song. But other than that, for 18 tracks and a strong Justin Timberlake runtime, because his records are pretty long from the music I listen to with his records, and that his discography does get very long. But other than that, this record did pretty well. And that was my number 48 pick. Number 47 is Judas Priest with Invincible Shield. Strong record. Panic Attack was one of my favorite singles off this record. There were a few other singles, but I only listened to that one during, I think, 2023, late 2023 or something like that, when it came out. But still, this record did very well when it came out on March 8th of this year, and was one of the highly anticipated records that I personally enjoyed. The prog metal style they went for with this record was very crushing and fast-paced, that made me jam out to this record for the overall runtime of like 50-something minutes or so. So, great record. Had to be in my best albums of 2024 list. Number 46 is The Plot in You with Volume 2 EP. Now, Closure was a song that I wasn't sure if I was going to get used to, but it's the opening track to the second EP for Volume 2 EP, but Don't Look Away was one of the best tracks on this record. Then you have All That I Can Give, I think was another song, but it was one of the songs that came out on May 10th, when this Volume 2 EP came out. But other than that, I enjoyed this release, and it made it on the best albums of 2024. Even though it's an EP, it still made it on this list. Number 45 is Nothing More with Carnal. Great, highly anticipated record for the summer of 2024. Even though the summer was fucking hot, still enjoyed this record this year. One of my favorite releases of 2024. Free Fall was my favorite. House on Sand, featuring the screaming vocalist from I Prevail. This track did very well to impress me, and I really enjoyed this record in 2024. If It Doesn't Hurt was my favorite single. Angel's Song featuring David Dryman was a pretty strong song from what I listened to. And execution wise, this record did very good. There were some other tracks like I can't remember when the song Stuck, I think. It had another featured artist in that track that did very good. Run for Your Life was the closing track officially to the record, but there were some interlude tracks that did very well. Like The River was my favorite, and some other singles that I enjoyed during what I listened to for this release of Nothing More's follow-up to Spirits, which Spirits was a great record, keep in mind, but I don't think this record topped Spirits. Carnal didn't, but it still did very well in its own way. Number 44 is Hardy with Quit. Now, one of the releases I was very excited to listen to. Good Girl Phase was my favorite track. Had the drummer from Red Hot Chili Peppers drumming in this track, and I really enjoyed that. I Don't Miss was my favorite one. Psycho was my highly anticipated single that came out in May of 2024 this year, and I was really impressed with this record. Orphan was my favorite song on this record, but then you have 6 Feet Under, Haley's song, or Kaylee's song, I meant to say. Great single, but execution-wise, for most of this record, it fused it very well. The opening track, Quit, was pretty good, but Rockstar is a pretty strong track, but it definitely gets overplayed a bit too much, but in a good way, because he's ripping on some of the rock and roll artists on this record, where he's saying, I ain't saying that I'm Nickelback. So, other than that, it's still a great record from what I listened to, and I had a blast listening to it. Jim Bob was my favorite song on this record. Soul for Sale was a pretty strong release, even though Fred Durst is in the music scene. He's like this hit or miss figure where you're like, okay, what's Fred Durst up to now with his new Limp Bizkit record? You just don't know with Limp Bizkit because they can make good stuff or cringe stuff. But other than that, Hardy pulled off a great record this year, and I don't really care what other people think about what this artist does with his sound. He does it in a good way, in my opinion. And I know Rock definitely had an opinion about Hardy and put him as the worst record of 2024. I'm like, well, you got your opinion, I have mine. As long as we can respect it, that's fine. If we don't, then you know I'm unsubscribing to you. But other than that, Hardy, number 44 with Quit. Number 43 is Flat Black with Dark Side of the Brain. This is going to have to be the last record I'll mention. Then I'll continue forward in the next part for the remaining albums I want to mention. But Flat Black, Dark Side of the Brain was a record I was really enjoying. Sideways was my favorite single. Then you have Halo, which was one of my favorites. Justice Will Be Done was pretty good. Then you have Lack of Respect. That was kind of in your face in a way, but I wasn't sure if I was feeling for that one. There were some songs, It's Okay to Be Angry was my favorite one. But other than that, this record pulled it off with what it was going for. And looking at it face value, I enjoyed this Flat Black record. It was 14 tracks long of a 50-minute record, but enjoyable as hell. And definitely kicked ass. Wes's vocals sound really good during this record. And his aggressive screaming vocals, his clean vocals sound really good. And I really enjoyed Flat Black's new album. Even though one of the guitarists from Five Finger Death Punch's part of this band now, they still pulled off a good record. Jason Hook, I think, was the guitarist for this band. Still a great record. Definitely was one of my favorite albums of 2024. Now I'm going to have to return to you for part 2 of the best albums of 2024 list. I hope you enjoyed part 1 for best albums of 2024. I'll get the second part recorded as soon as I can get around to it. But until then, you guys have a good night. I'll see you in part 2 of best albums of 2024 as soon as I get around to it. Thanks for watching.